Rachel Ziegler makes major panic move with disaster Snow White apology interview. Rachel Ziegler returns for a disaster apology tour, and now the Rachel Ziegler backlash is not slowing down anytime soon. Welcome back to Views with Hughes, agenda free news. This is Jerome Hughes. Now, let's go ahead and get right into it. As you all have heard now, Rachel Ziegler Snow White and the ongoing backlash that Rachel Ziegler and Rachel Ziegler Snow White have been facing have led to a lot of bad publicity. Now, ever since this entire controversy really caught fire in late 2023, Rachel Ziegler has been at the center of it all. Now, let's be honest here. Disney knew they had to make some serious changes if they were going to save the Rachel Ziegler Snow White, especially since Rachel Ziegler Snow White had become a lightning rod for criticism, okay? Now, we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars invested in Rachel Ziegler Snow White, which was supposed to be a reimagining of the iconic tale with Rachel Ziegler in the lead role. But instead, it sparked outrage. And as you see, Disney's first major move to fix this situation was to delay the release by a full year and reshoot significant parts of Rachel Zegler Snow White. But even after months of silence, Rachel Zegler returned to the spotlight in what many have dubbed her Snow White apology tour, with fans immediately noticing a shift in how Rachel Zegler Snow White was talking about Rachel Zegler, or how Rachel Zegler talked about the Rachel Zegler Snow White. Now, I know all of this is old news to come to some of you, but it lays the groundwork for what we've seen in the past few days. And it seems that the mission to save Rachel Zegler Snow White is still in full swing. And of course, Rachel Zegler Snow White is leading the charge once again. Now, in a recent interview, Rachel Zegler spoke on behalf of, Disney trying to once again apologize for changes made to the classic fairy tale. But the way she did it, the justification she gave, hasn't gone down well with many fans. You see, Rachel Ziegler Snow White explained that in this new version of the story, Snow White survived the snowstorm as a baby, and her parents named her after her resilience. And this was clearly an attempt to justify casting Rachel Ziegler Snow White, who is Hispanic, in the role traditionally known for having skin as white as snow. But let's be honest here, it just didn't work. Now, Rachel Zegler Snow White justification only further divided the fan base, you see, and the people who were already fine with Rachel Zegler being cast in the role are still fine with it, and those who weren't, well, they're still not on board, okay? But what Rachel Zegler's latest statement really shows us is that Disney isn't just swapping out the race of the character, they're rewriting the entire story. You see, this is something that fans of any major franchise never take kindly to, and we've seen it time and time again, especially with Disney's treatment of Star Wars and Marvel. And Rachel Zegler Snow White is now in the middle of yet another controversy where changing beloved elements of a story is causing massive backlash. And as usual, this backlash is hurting Rachel Zegler Snow White as well as Snow White financially. Now, what's really strange is that Disney seems to be caught off guard by all of this Rachel Zegler backlash. But honestly, at this point, it's like they're bringing it upon themselves. If they wanted to go ahead and introduce a diverse range of characters, why not create a new fairy tales rather than taking one that already exists and throwing Rachel Zegler Snow White into it? Simply, they're just not creative. Now, this way, they could create, new fan bases for Black, brown, or Asian princesses without stirring up controversy. No one had an issue when Disney cast a Chinese actress to play Mulan, right? But Rachel Zegler Snow White finds herself in the crossfire because instead of creating a new story, Disney opted to race swap an existing one, which has only served to divide the fan base even further. And well, speaking of division, let's talk about Rachel Zegler Snow White's case compared to Halle Bailey's Little Mermaid. You see, Bailey, like Rachel Zegler, seemed to like genuinely nice young lady who was excited to be a Disney princess. Yeah, because Disney chose to race swap the character rather than give Bailey her own new fairy tale. She too faced the backlash just like Rachel Zegler Snow White did. Now, Bailey had to endure unnecessary personal attacks, and that's something that no one should have to go through. But this only goes to show that race swapping established characters in live action remakes does more harm than good. And this is Disney's fault, not Bailey's. But Rachel Zegler brought this one on herself due to her actions, words, and her extreme sense of entitlement. Now, Rachel Zegler Snow White will never be viewed as the original Snow White. You see, the Rachel Zegler version will always be seen as a political statement rather than a celebration. Instead of creating new diverse characters that everyone can rally behind, Rachel Zegler Snow White and these race swap remakes are causing unnecessary division among the fans. Now, let's be honest. People argue that they fight in the comment sections and it only adds fuel to the fire. And movies are supposed to bring us together, but these choices by Disney and by extension Rachel Zegler's role are doing the opposite. They're actually driving people apart. So can Rachel Ziegler save Rachel Ziegler Snow White with any amount of apologizing or justification? I don't think so. At this point, even if Disney reshot the entire film to be exactly like the original, the Rachel Ziegler Snow White will still face backlash, and the division is too deep and the audience is too fractured. It's hard to see that Rachel Ziegler Snow White ever making, the kind of money Disney had hoped for, especially since Rachel Ziegler Snow White has become such a polarizing figure in the discussion. And let's be real here, Rachel Ziegler Snow White needs to make nearly $1 billion just to go ahead and break even. And with the negative press surrounding Rachel Ziegler Snow White and Rachel Ziegler herself, it seems almost impossible. Now, another thing to consider is that the total cost for the Rachel Ziegler Snow White is rumored to be pushing $400 million. Now, that's interesting. The Rachel Ziegler Snow White is leading to a $400 million disaster, not because of the production value, but because Disney has had to throw good money at the bad. And they can't afford to have Rachel Ziegler Snow White flop because, the Rachel Ziegler Snow White is too important to the Disney brand. And the Rachel Ziegler Snow White isn't just another actress in this case, or Rachel Ziegler is not the only actress in this case, but she's a part of the film that represents Disney's legacy, and that's why they're willing to spend so much money trying to fix it. But honestly, even Rachel Ziegler Snow White can't save this one at this point. Now, we still got months to go before Rachel Ziegler Snow White releases, and Rachel Ziegler and the movie itself is going to be front and center in hundreds of interviews. And you can bet that, every word that Rachel Ziegler says is going to be picked apart and analyzed by fans. And the backlash is too big, and there's nothing that Rachel Ziegler or anyone else involved in Rachel Ziegler Snow White can say that will change the minds of people who have already decided not to see it. Now, the Rachel Ziegler Snow White is fighting an uphill battle, and it's hard to see how she or any Disney or Disney may, or for that matter, can turn things around. Now, Rachel Ziegler has, gone from being brash and outspoken to basically, more thoughtful and humble in recent interviews. And she's doing her best to show reverence for the original Snow White film, acknowledging that its place in history and its importance to Disney. But it feels like a little too little too late at this point. And the original Snow White was groundbreaking, the first feature-length animated film, and it's beloved by millions. And Rachel Ziegler Snow White may respect that legacy or may not respect it, but can she really save the Rachel Ziegler Snow White in the eyes of the public? Or basically, I don't think so. So what do y'all think? Do you think that the Rachel Ziegler Snow White will make a profit at the box office? Will Rachel Ziegler Snow White be able to change the minds of the critics with her apologies and interviews? Let me know your thoughts about this in the comments below. Also, if you enjoyed what was said in this video, go ahead and smash the like button and share this video far wide across social media. And also be sure to watch more videos that will appear on the end screens. And if you enjoy what I shared in this video, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, click the bell notifications so that way, and also be sure to turn on all notifications too, so that way you'll be notified of future uploads and updates. Until then, peace.